All right. Hello, everybody.
Hey, guys.
We are live. Welcome to FMA episode discussion number 9. Today, I have the pleasure of having John Kelly from Kelly's MMA. Thank you and welcome for coming on.
Definitely.
This is going to be exciting. And we're going to add a show to the tell. So it's going to be a little show and tell today, all right? But before we get started, I just, I'd like to, first, welcome you. Thank you for coming on and taking your time. I know you're a busy guy. Usually I like to get everybody's just general background, so the people who are watching out and will watch the video when it's subsequently put on. What can you just tell us about your background?
I started off like a lot of people in traditional style Tang Soo Do. So I got my black belt in that first. This was back, I'd say, early 90s probably.
It sounds so long ago.
I know, right? So I did Tang Soo Do first, got my black belt in that. Then I did a small circle JiuJitsu.
Wally J?
Similar. It was like an Aikido blend.
Okay.
It was like a small circle Aikido blend. And then I got my second degree black belt in that. Then after that, I saw a video on TV of Ron Kazakowski. And I saw him doing JKD and the grappling and stuff. And I was just fascinated by it. I thought it was just so interesting.
That was kind of like my journey. I don't know. I didn't see a TV advertisement. Somehow and I never figured this out. I never asked him. I should have. I got a flyer from him doing like one of the things he used to do on the weekends.
Yeah.
That's how I found him.
I know. When I saw him doing stuff on TV, I saw him rolling around on the ground and doing striking and doing weapons and stick. And I was hooked just from seeing the video. I'm like, this is for me. So I started training with him, and I did all the different systems, the Kali and the JKD and his grappling system.
Yeah, the morning classes now too.
Yeah. So it was really great. That was my first exposure to reality-based martial arts.
Hey, I always tell everybody, as far as Connecticut goes, he was the pioneer.
Yep, for sure. And then he introduced me to the Gracies. He would have them up for seminars. He'd have Horian and Hoist come up, and Hickson come up. And they would come up and do seminars. And back at that time, Hickson used to wrestle everyone at the entire seminar. You know what I mean? Nobody does that anymore. And I was just in love with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu after I had
that
exposure.
he would just like during the seminar, like would just go with everybody, give everybody an opportunity. That's incredible.
Yeah, so he was amazing.
Yeah, I definitely don't see that.
Ron gave me that exposure to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I fell in love with. So then I spent a year traveling abroad just doing jiu-jitsu. So I went out to Hawaii and I trained with Helson a few times. Then I went to California and I trained with Hoist Gracie and then Hickson Gracie. And then I actually spent most of the time with the Machados when I was out there. For like 8 months or so, I spent training with the Machados. We were amazing. They were just super cool guys. And their technique was great.
Everybody you just named there though.
Yeah, they were like superstars. But at the time, it was the '90s. I don't know, mid '90s maybe. Nobody knew about them. Nobody knew about jiu-jitsu. There was no MMA.
If it wasn't for the UFC,
right? So that was pretty cool. And then after that, I came back and I trained with Henzo just a couple times.
Oh, in the city.
In the city, we would travel down a couple times, and I saw him. And then I finally got exposed to Andrew Calandrelli. And I saw him, and after training with him, I'm like, wow, this guy's freaking amazing.
I know, you always spoke highly of him.
Yeah, he's a Henzo Gracie student. He now is a Marcelo Garcia student. But his MMA, in my opinion, is just amazing. So I trained on and off with him MMA, but my goal was always to self-defense MMA. So I wanted weapons and stuff. And that's, of course, where you come in. So all my weapons training comes via you. So on my knife, you were training with all the best people at the time. You were training with Atienzas for a while. You know what I mean? And now you've exposed me to David Gold and the AK guys and Tom Solis. So many people.
World class,
Yeah. So basically, I have to thank you for all my Kali training.
Well, it's a pleasure because
I get it through you.
What I was going to allude to is I have to disclose this. We obviously been trained together and friends for 22 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
So-
We were training in my backyard back in the day.
No, actually, the first place when you had that rinky-dink apartment over by the touring
Oh,
company.
yeah.
And you used to get arguments with that guy with the parking situation
Yeah.
or something.
Oh, that was hilarious. In my garage, in the backyard, we trained like everywhere.
The most makeshift
was funny.
settings. Hey, all right. What I want to get into is just we're going to touch on direct correlation between training methods and how it leads to utmost functionality. If that's your pursuit, if you like the arts and you like pursue that, nothing wrong with it. That's your journey. But today, I just want to make it clear: we're coming from more of the functional direction and how to achieve the utmost functionality, and how that's going to be the precursor to that will be your training methods, and that's what we're going to really kind of focus on today. But nothing against if you kind of like the art and all that, and you don't do the functionality, no problem. That's your journey, But again, that's where we're going to come from today. Again, I just want to avoid confusion. The reference we're going to talk about today, because it makes sense and it shows the utmost failures, in my opinion. And I'm going to let John talk more about this. Is the knife. So that's kind of what we're going to center as far as the instrument of choice today. So I'm going to let you just go. What do you, from an overall view, what do you see in FMA today? And obviously we're not going to identify practitioners, systems, all that, but just overall via social media, YouTube. What do you like and what do you don't like?
I think a feeder makes the system. So if somebody doesn't give you realistic feeds, your system is not going to evolve to where it's supposed to be. So when I'm picking out techniques, you have to have a purpose. So my goal is self-defense minded. So I'm not going to do a lot of sport when the main concern is going to be a knife or a gun or something like that. So pretty much everything I like to do revolves around knife-orientated stuff.
Interesting.
It's the most common weapon. You can get it anywhere. Everybody has them in their house.
Can you expand on why you chose knife, or you've been really heading in that direction as far as you indicated self-defense?
I did a lot of sport, and there's nothing wrong with sport, but it's kind of like overkilling a position. I'd say after about 2 years of training in MMA, it would be very hard for a human being to kill you with just their hands, right? So I like the example. If you went to a concert and you had 2 years of MMA training, how many people at that concert could kill you? 10 people, 5 people, nobody, right? But if you put a knife in somebody's hands, how many people at that concert can kill you? The entire concert. Anyone who has a knife could potentially kill you. So all my focus has shifted in recent years to doing all my MMA training with a knife. So I don't do any wrestling, no sparring, unless the people are carrying training weapons. So that's why it's really good for police, for women, for someone who's really self-defense minded. So when I did that, when I started carrying training weapons while grappling, 85% of my jiu-jitsu had to be removed.
Yeah.
85% of my wrestling had to be removed because the positions allowed people to access weapons.
Draw.
And that's just the reality. And as much as I love grappling, I had to throw away a massive amount of techniques just because of the knife.
So the cliche, less is more, is pretty appropriate here, right?
Yeah, way less. Yeah, way less.
So, that's fascinating. And again, since we've been training for 20 years, obviously my position on intent, dynamic, how it's got to be, in development. You can go in gradual increments of resistance, which we're going to demonstrate incidentally. But it's got to be real.
That's how
if you want to take it, in other words, if you want to have a survival chance out there, whatever you do in here,
right.
It's got as closely as humanly possible. It's got to mirror.
Oh, I totally agree. I want to know what I'm actually capable of doing, right? I don't want if my training partners, and I'll go through the steps that I do when I'm trying a technique, but ultimately I have to have that person give me full competitive resistance, like we're at a tournament for jiu-jitsu, that intensity level where that person's trying to survive, they're trying to win. So I actually know what I'm capable of doing. I want the mistakes to happen here,
Right.
not when I'm out there.
Especially with a knife.
Right, one mistake. That's it, one mistake. So when I'm picking out a technique, I'll start with like 50% organic resistance. This is the big mistake I see on a lot of YouTube videos, right? Organic in my mind means you move in a natural motion. Anytime I see somebody go, and then they do all these moves, right?
Like, would you be fair? Would you agree? It's got to, even though it can be slow, it doesn't have to be like full.
Yes.
But it's got to be continuous.
It's got to be continuous.
Yeah.
They have to retract. They have to move the whole time. It has to be organic, like you're both moving at the same time, just like you're doing jiu-jitsu or boxing. People are moving, adjusting. You know, it just makes me crazy when I see somebody go, ha! And the guy works around his arm, and his arm just stays there.
They do their magic.
I don't understand. And there's no follow through a lot of times. Sometimes they'll go and there's no follow through. They just kind of stop it. So that's the first piece. I'll go 50% organic because you can't go 100 right away because it's something new. So you have to experiment.
Sure.
You might throw away something good.
Yeah,
if the guy
right,
goes
if you didn't-
ballistic.
No, and,
Right.
and I think it's fair to say over the 20
That's
years,
happened.
we've probably done that.
That's totally happened. I've thrown out some stuff because I went too high resistance
You're
first.
like, oh, that doesn't work. And then you go
Right.
back and like, oh,
Oh,
wait a
maybe I
minute.
just, if I did this, if I did that.
Yeah.
So I go like 50% completely organic, then I'll go up to like 75, then I'll go to 100. So I'll go 100 non-competitive resistance to resemble people who are unskilled,
Okay.
right? If you go totally competitive with your training partners who've been doing it 20 years, you're probably not going to be successful, right?
Because they know, they've seen the
Yeah.
they've seen how
evolution.
they evolve, the evolution. Like we were like Glenn going, Ryan. It's like your takedowns are phenomenal. But
I can't
some
take
of
Glenn
them-
down.
But it doesn't mean they're not good.
Right,
it's just because
right.
he's seen
them
like
all.
like disarming Glenn, man, is extremely difficult because
Exactly.
he
Jiu-jitsu or anything else. You're not going to armbar Marcelo Garcia. It doesn't mean arm bars are
not
bad.
not this guy.
It's just not going to happen, right? So after that 100% unskilled resistance, then the final level is 100% competitive resistance.
When you say 100% competitive, are you talking about
I mean,
Helmets.
you're countering me.
Helmets.
Yeah, helmets.
okay?
100% striking, 100% grappling, and the person now has changed from an unskilled attacker to a skilled attacker, and that's where your chain expands because you get a competitive guy, you do this, he does that, and that's where your depth comes. I guess the unskilled person, the first move is going to work. I mean, how many people with your disarm who was new? How many times have you had a failure? Almost never.
No, agreed. Like, you know, I just,
Almost never.
Right. And with the thing with disarm, like, obviously, you know, a lot of time and all that, but there's some people I'm not disarming, man.
Because they're just
David Gould, Tom
Right.
Sodas.
Not gonna happen. Yeah.
Their offense is just so sophisticated.
Right.
Does that mean I suck? No. It just means that
They're at a higher level.
It's just the way it is.
No, exactly. But if you don't have that competitive experience, you don't know where the potential failures are.
But yeah, no, you know what? I like that. Can you let's touch on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Explain more on that. I think that's a good point.
So, if you want, you have a basic entry, right? So for us, it's the 2-on-1. That's our goal, right? So we want to get two hands ganged up on the knife, and we want to work from there. If the person's not very skilled, you usually get that first disarm, and it's not that big a deal. However, once you add the competitive resistance, that's the highest level. Now the people you've been training with, intermediate, advanced, really advanced, they start making breaks in your chain and counter. So he starts doing his disarm. I block it, I change and get head position. He's got to change and do something else. And all of a sudden it starts expanding into
Not
this massive chain like a
fun.
man. Yeah, no, it's not fun. Competitive resistance is the worst because you got really intelligent people messing up your stuff, you know.
But I tell you though, and I swear to this, and I don't care what anybody says. If you have training partners like that, you have no choice but to do it.
Yeah, it just makes you good.
Yeah.
It just makes you good because you actually realize if you go through that process, you know what you're capable of doing,
I
right?
agree.
And everything has a lever tolerance. So if you're 100 pounds and the guy you're fighting is 250 pounds, there's certain movements that the lever is not strong enough to work. That's just the reality. It's science, right? So you're used to doing this move, but now you add 100 pounds to the guy, and the move doesn't work. So you have to know what you're capable of. And if you go through this process, you know, I can do this to a guy this size. You know, you push another 100 pounds, that particular move is not going to work.
I was really strong, like that monster guy.
Right, the guy with the massive arms. There's a funny story. A guy came in, he was like 300 pounds, and he was a wrestler. This was way back in the day. And I went and I put an arm bar on him, right, which has a pretty big lever arm bar. And this guy, he literally picked me up and curled my entire body with one hand, and I had to let the arm bar go. So it just shows you, if you don't have the next transition piece, and you meet that guy that's like, just like
stuck there in a cold position.
He's like holding me like that.
Talking
like,
to you.
Wow, like, what kind of guy? That was crazy. And I had to let it go. Yeah.
That would be, yeah, that would definitely be sleepless nights.
But that's the reality. You know, your body's a tool. Some tools are much more, you know, bigger, more efficient, faster, stronger. So you just have to know what you're capable of.
It's the constant. Your system has to constantly adapt and revolve.
Right.
And the only way you do that is you got to be around like-minded people who are willing to do that journey with you.
Yes.
And I'm gonna let you talk on this.
Ego. That is the destroyer of reality, right? If you have an ego, in my school, if you're a beginner, you shouldn't really ask too many questions. Because you don't know anything, you just kind of have to accept that, yeah, people put it through the process. Right, you just absorb. But I tell people, if there's something new, I'm like, this one's under construction, right? So I'm not set on this. It hasn't gone through the journey that we just talked about, right? It's under construction. But after they get to like the intermediate level, now their minds start to understand all the levers. I let them ask questions and resist and mess up my technique. So many instructors do not want to be embarrassed by their students. I do not care. I don't care. If you can mess up my technique, I'm like, that's a gift.
Yeah. Here's the thing, like, and I'm totally with you on that. And you know how I feel about that. It's like, if you truly want to get better, you will embrace failure.
Yeah, embrace the suck.
Like, if you can see at the end of that, like, okay, you know what, this is awful right now. I don't like this. This is, man, it sucks.
Yes.
But if you can see at the end how it's going to, assuming that you're seeing light at the end of the tunnel, it makes sense as logistical, you know, about it and all that. I'm totally with you. Like, it will benefit you. Now the steps,
100%.
You know.
And I think too, that's the downfall of a lot of instructors is they teach their students not to really resist, right? It's like an unspoken thing. If you try to counter them, you know that there's going to be an emotional payback. Maybe they'll be angry with you, or they might even tell you, hey, cut it out. You know what I mean? As a beginner, you shouldn't do that. But once you get to intermediate level, you definitely should ask questions. You definitely should resist. You definitely should try to figure out ways to screw up the technique. And that's how the whole thing evolves. Ego destroys reality martial arts.
I totally agree. And the thing is too, and they should definitely that. It's their journey.
Yeah.
Like, you should definitely, like I tell my students, like, validate it, question it, try it out. You should see if it works for you. Like, don't just because I'm telling you.
Right.
Like, you should actually try it out. It's your journey. You are the most important piece in this, not me.
Right.
Not the system.
Yes, exactly. And I've had people add techniques that were pretty new. Right? You know, like Jody, you know how small she is. Yeah. She's like super, super little, right? A female student we have. And I was teaching her a technique, and I had a certain piece in it that made the lever tolerance a little smaller, and it was a little harder for her. So she kind of did something different because her body was so small, and I looked and I'm like, wait a minute, that's like a little better. And I took her little idea, awesome. And I tweaked it, and I always tell people, all right, we're going to put a J on that for Jody, right?
J.
Because she added a piece, or put a J on it for Jeremy, or a C on it for, you know.
I'm going to see this.
Yes.
That was probably what I was
so
away.
It's a spinning thing. I used to come under and then do the hand like that.
Gotcha.
But that takes a little extra muscle. She just took it, and I'm like, wow.
She just made a...
She just kept rotating.
A rotation. Oh.
And now she can now do, even so small, she can do that disarm.
She's getting that level.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. I love it.
Before we get to the show aspect, I just wanted, because I know we're kind of pressed for time here, and I want to definitely get the show in here.
I don't think
What
it
do you
changes
see
it.
as because I know this is kind of FMA, you know,
Yes.
but it's related. Just in again, without targeting and not, you know, and not criticizing, but you know, positive critiquing. And like, what would be some of your suggestions to practitioners? Again, I guess we'll use a knife as the.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I think everything should revolve around a knife. That's my conclusion. Most common weapon. Everybody has it. If you ask law enforcement, I have a lot of friends in law enforcement. Everybody that they take into custody always has some kind of weapon on them, and it's usually a knife because it's 100% legal. They're in every house. You can buy them. They're everywhere, right? Guns. There's a process, so you don't
Right,
see
you
that.
got
You don't see that as often. So it has to revolve around that. But I think, just like we talked about, it's all about the feeding. If you have no ego, your goal is just the truth, and you allow resistance throughout your feeding process, you will have reality. That's why a lot of times we'll see like something Burton does,
Yeah.
and we'll have something so similar.
I know.
And be like, how could he, this guy's in Hawaii, right? And we have a move that's so similar, never saw it before, but we came to a very similar conclusion. It's because he's working the model in the same way.
You know, like the science lab approach
Right.
and like, and you know what? Knowing that, hey, you know what? Didn't pan out at 75% resistance.
Chuck it up, right. If
You
you
know,
can't
you-
do it 75% organic,
Yeah.
then it goes. If you could do it at 100%, that's actually a good point too.
Yeah.
If you could do it at 100% unskilled, don't throw it away. You know what I mean? If just the competitive guys stop it, I wouldn't necessarily get rid of that
No,
one.
because maybe they've seen the evolution.
Yeah.
They're throwing wrenches in there, but it might be
Correct.
such a vile. It might be like a really good thing, you know.
And if you think about it, what's the chance that you're going to meet an MMA fighter or a skilled knife guy? It's like 1%.
The knife guy,
Oh, that's even less.
I think so.
Yeah, it's even less.
Like really, like not just your,
skilled
not
knife
just
guy.
your bum, but somebody
Right.
really.
Right. So never throw away 100% unskilled because
Yeah.
that's 99% of what you're going to see in real life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So even if it doesn't make it past the competitive feed category, if it makes it past 100% unskilled, you still keep it.
I'm with you. Right,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's what you're mostly gonna see out there.
But that's why I like the AK guys. I like
No,
Gold.
they're doing
I
it.
like Solus. I like Burton. I like all those guys because they approach it in a very pragmatic way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course, I get all that information via you.
Yeah, but you know what though? Here's the thing with it. Like, if you want, you need training partners.
Yes.
Like, I can sit in a room and like think about it all day.
All right.
You know what I mean? But you need that body. So I thank you for being patient. Like, hey, I want to try this.
Yeah.
All right. This is fantastic.
Yeah, that was
but let's.
great.
I think because I know you were pressed for time.
I am. Yeah.
So let's get to the show.
Okay.
So So what do you want to show? Like,
We
I'm
can
gonna grab a knife.
talk about the different feeding and what they look like. So if you go to YouTube or something, it'll help you weed out techniques.
Oh, compare.
Yeah, I'll show. Because it's so hard. You look on YouTube and sometimes you're like, oh, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And then we try it and we're like, it's terrible. And it happens a lot.
All right, folks. I'm just gonna grab a knife and I'll be right back.
Okay. Jeremy, can we steal you for the filming if you don't mind? Jeremy. Awesome. If you're heavy breathing, it's because Jeremy's training out there. You can just pick it up, I guess, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So if there's a gap where you guys don't see us, it's just
Yeah, you can
because.
just grab it, Jeremy, if you don't mind.
Can I flip it so I can see?
Yeah, flip it, sure.
Do you know where the button is?
Which one flips it, Dean?
Not sure.
Sorry, guys. Oh, this one. Here we go. I got it.
Oh, no.
There we go. Yeah, we'll flip. So now you'll face us. You got it? Okay.
Is this all right?
All right, so I'll feed you since you're disarmed so good. So the one you know is completely fake is one that has no organic movement at all, right? Where they go, ha! And they just stand there and they do this. Yeah, you can do any of the amazing disarms that people do. Right? As soon as you see a stop motion, right, you know that it's fake. So the next level of reality, there's people that can go organic, but they're not really resisting. You know what I mean? So sometimes you'll have a feed and it kind of goes here and they move and it looks pretty good and then he doesn't move, right? Now all the moves that he's doing are good. These are all the ones that we've weeded. We'd have to train fake moves and I don't want to offend anybody. So we're not going to do somebody's move and say that it doesn't work. I would never tell anybody that their move doesn't work. I'm just saying it doesn't work for me, a lot of the stuff. So anyway, if you see a hit and stop, it's not good, generally speaking. The next thing you'll see is organic movement, but they won't really resist. They'll be like, they're kind of moving, but they're not resisting. This one's very hard to tell if it's real or not. This one you have to take and train it, and just allow somebody to give you organic resistance. Like, I'm trying to think of one. Maybe the one that people do where they go to the outside one. Yeah. So a lot of people, they like to do this. You know what I mean? But every time I personally try this, I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying for me, it never works. So as they go, he starts doing a move and they don't really resist, and then he whips them down. You know what I mean? Or he does some kind of disarm. But whenever that happens for me, ready, we go, resist a little bit. That's what always happens. Like every time. And I know people will say if you whip them or you go ahead, resist. But every time, the deer's past the knife. And I'm not saying it's bad. Maybe there's a technique I'm missing in there or something, a piece. But so far, every time I do that move, it doesn't work. So when you have things that look organic, you have to test them in an organic way when you get back to your school. When you know it's real is when they put on the gear, right? And he's smashing me, you know what I mean? Hitting me with headbutts, and he's really hitting. And yes, and a lot of times, you may throw stuff away if you don't put the gear on. Like sometimes I'll do a feed and he'll go to hit me, like you do a hit move. If he hits, sometimes your partner, there's no actual hit. So they'll mess up your move. That can screw up your move too. So with any kind of hitting, you have to put gear on. So when he smashes me, my head actually goes back. That's how you can really test something. A lot of times I've thrown out good striking techniques because they didn't put gear on. So I would strike, boom, and nothing would happen. You know what I mean? And then he'd maybe stab me or something because he didn't move realistically. So when you put on the gear and you're like, bam, you really blast them. That's how you can tell with the striking. For this feeding, you could tell because when I go against Dean in any of our videos, I am really trying to kill him. And I repeat, that's another part of fake feeds. A lot of fake feeds, they'll go hard on the first one, and then they just die. And they don't do anything. All the times I'm feeding, I'm trying to rip that thing out. You know what I mean? I'm 100%, and I'm 100% ripping it out. Because if I don't, it's not organic. Right? If I go 100%, and they just die. I see a lot of that too. They'll go hard in that first shot, and then all resistance stops. So you just gotta keep resisting the whole time. He's doing the move. So you know it's good. You know what I mean? And then the last level is competitive, you know. He goes for his move, I counter it, he counters, you know what I mean? So you start getting levels now. That's super skilled, right? You're not gonna see that in unskilled. So I go here, and I get my other hand in, and I square to him, and he goes to the next move. So that's the competitive resistance. That's the final piece. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that was fantastic. And
Okay.
again, I want to thank you so much. So if you haven't, hit like, subscribe. Next week, episode 10 will be, I'll be advertising that as far as who's going to be on, times and all that. I want to thank you again. Thank you for coming.
Awesome,
on.
yeah.
That was
Thank
awesome.
you. I appreciate it.
And we have to thank
Always
our
good.
cameraman.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
You could sit.